Okay, welcome to Tuesday night Movara home live lecture series. This is where we provide free education to help you reach your goals, all from the comfort of your own home, and just doing what we can to spread a good message and to help everybody and anybody who's willing to tune in. So we're grateful that you're listening and here today. And those who don't know, my name is Forrester. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've been practicing clinically for 7 years now, and my wife and I also own a gym, physical training facility, and so I like to integrate a lot of the physical health elements with mental health, which is part of why I love the Movara model. You know, the day starts with these physical activities, getting out, being active, and enjoying the outdoors. And so today's lecture is addiction versus connection. And so, you know, first off, what is our understanding of what addiction is? It's a term that gets thrown around pretty easy. And, you know, in talking with the groups here in the live audiences, I guess, here at Movara, and in the one-on-one sessions that I have, there are a couple of addictions that continue to pop up. And so, you know, we're familiar with traditional addiction, chemical addiction, you know, alcohol, drugs. But another addiction that is very common is food or emotional eating. And so while we have addiction in the traditional sense of chemical addiction, which is, you know, involves the use of substances, and food technically is a substance, but more elusive and more encompassing for the rest of us are behavioral addictions, things that we do and even things that we say, and the impact and effect that that has on all of us from you know, day to day. And so we could plot the first slide there. So first of all, I just want to go through how we get to addiction in the first place. And a lot of that has to do with mindless action. And so just see this little flow chart here of how we end up with addiction. Now, mindless action, what is mindless action? I just like to call it the easy out, the easy thing to do, the path of least resistance. And it's the default. And so I'll speak from firsthand experience and from the experience of many people that I've spoken with. Eating, end of the day, it's been a long day, stressed out, or it's just been rough, and there's some cookies on the counter, and so we want to get into it. And it's just the easy out. It's there, it's accessible, and so that's what we default to. Another mindless action is negative thinking. It's a problem that a lot of us have. And so when things go wrong, or we're just not feeling our best, we can get into these negative thinking processes. We can get into these spirals of thinking negatively, either about ourselves or about other people. Another big one that comes up a lot these days is our phones, right? We hear constantly people are addicted to their phone. And I know I fall into it sometimes. Sometimes I just mindlessly, I'm bored, or I'm just and I mindlessly pull out my phone and start scrolling, checking email, Facebook, Instagram. So it's just these mindless actions that we fall into. From there, we fall into ritualistic behavior or habits. The things that we constantly do over and over, they become habit, ritualistic, right? And so that's something we've all started goals before and wanting to do new things. And so we know that repetition is how we're going to get into the habit. And there's all kinds of numbers out there, you know, 21 days, 6 weeks, there's all these different numbers of days of how long it takes to get into a habit. But something that we constantly do is going to become habit or ritualistic. When we do anything for long enough and consistently, then it becomes compulsive. And when something becomes compulsive, that means when we don't do it, we feel weird. And so we've kind of at that point fallen into the realm of addiction. And so if we go to the next slide there, the reason for this is because we're looking for our internal pharmacy. There are hundreds of different neurochemicals and hormones that we are looking for. Everything that we do serves a purpose. Even with addiction, we're looking for releases of these different chemicals. And the one that I have up on screen here right now, these are the four main ones, and probably heard of them before, but it's going to go through each of them really quickly and some of the natural ways that we can get these chemicals in our body. So the first one is dopamine. Dopamine is a big one. It's the reward chemical. Eating food releases dopamine. And this goes back to our primal beginnings where, we didn't know when our next meal was going to come. We didn't know if a woolly mammoth was going to run past the cave every day. And so when it did, and we got some mammoth meat, we were super happy about it. And our body dumped a ton of dopamine into us to let us know that it was a good thing. And so eating food releases dopamine. We do. So that's why when we're happy, we celebrate with food in today's societies and cultures. And then we also grieve with food as well. Why? Because it makes us feel good, makes us feel better. Achieving goals, completing tasks, self-care activities, these also release dopamine in the body. If any of you are like me, I'm a task person. So I like to write my lists every day. And I'm the type of person where if I do something that's not on my list, I add it to the list and then I cross it off. And so I see some people shaking their heads. Yes, because we're getting that extra dopamine because we're completing stuff and it makes us feel good. And so I started my day with 10 things on my list. And now there's 15 things on there because I added a few extras in there. And so this is just a way that we get dopamine. And too much of anything, even a good thing, can be a bad thing, right? Because we can take that too far, right? Where we can become addicted to the process of getting these dopamine hits. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that here later. Endorphins are the next one. And so if you've ever heard of the runner's high, any runners in the group right now or watching, it's that second wind, that extra burst of energy. And endorphins are literally painkillers within the body. And forgive me for always using primitive examples, but we're chasing that woolly mammoth anciently and we're getting tired, but we really want the dopamine because we know it's good. And so the body floods endorphins into our body to literally relieve the pain. So we could keep on chasing and get the food. And so exercising is a good way to get this naturally. Listening to music, watching a movie, laughter is the big one. And they've done lots of studies on the impact of laughter on pain medication, pain relief. And my favorite one, it was done in a children's ward of a hospital where they measured, pain medication and how much they were giving out to the people in the ward. And then the other group, they had like Patch Adams type characters going into these wards and people making balloon animals and just making the kids laugh. That ward is considered a lot less pain medications in that ward than the one that just used the drugs and the traditional ways to manage pain. So endorphins are really important and we need them. Serotonin, mood stabilizers, sun exposure, mindfulness, being with nature, meditation, pretty much getting outside, getting out of the concrete jungles that a lot of us are in most of the day, most days. That really, really helps. Again, I'm loving the Movara model. Guests that are here, the day starts with these mood stabilizing activities of getting outdoors and being out in nature and just enjoying the mindfulness aspect of that. And then, of course, another big one, oxytocin. And so I always like to bring up that, this is a big one that we were deprived of this last year and a half or so with a worldwide pandemic, not being able to interact and engage with other people as much. And so, referred to as the love hormone, this is created within us through socializing, physical touch, petting animals, helping others. So these are just some of the natural ways that we can get these 4 main chemicals that we need and that we want. But as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to addiction, we usually want to take the easy route. And so I know specifically with the pandemic over the last year and a half or so, I've spoken in one-on-ones with so many people where end of the day the glass of wine turned into a bottle of wine, and it didn't just happen the one night. It kind of happened night after night, and then you do that for a few months. Now it's become ritualistic. And now it's become compulsive because the night comes where you run out, or you're visiting someone in a different town. You got so used to that being the relief that that's the only way you know how to do it now, and so kind of fallen into that realm of addiction. Could go to the next one. By virtue of being in this group here at Movara, the biggest addiction that I am helping people get through is the unique addiction of the dopamine plus cortisol combination or cocktail. Again, just you're on this call, those people tuned in on the live as well. Like, we're high achievers. We want to go out, we want to do the best that we can and better our lives. And so because we have this want, this desire, this need for dopamine in our lives, we also, as a byproduct of that, we have cortisol. Now, we need cortisol. It's the stress hormone. We need healthy levels of cortisol because that's what helps us adapt. It's like anything. When it's chronic and it's consistent and it just continues to increase and increase more and more, then that's when it becomes bad. And so I know I fell into this last year and other times in my life too, where I'm so used to getting these constant dopamine hits through completing my task list and starting the day with a task list of 30 and kind of like, oh, okay, there's lots here and ready to do it and having those constant dopamine releases throughout the day. So that when I'd get it done, if the cortisol wasn't there to match, I would go out of my way to become stressed. I would take on more responsibilities. I would involve myself in another task or another project, because when we have our normal level of operation, this is our normal. Can they see me? Okay. I'm like, am I doing all these hand actions? And I can use. So if this was homeostasis, right, where this is normal, and so we've got a little bit of stress, and then good, and we're going up and down. Now, when something becomes chronic, right, those levels naturally keep rising, and it's slow and it's over time. That becomes the new norm. And so this combination of dopamine combined with cortisol, where we used to need this much to feel normal and functioning on any given day, we've now raised feeling normal to here. And so if we don't have dopamine to match or cortisol to match, we feel weird. And so we keep ourselves in these states of being stressed because we continually involve ourselves in all these different things. Many workaholics are a victim of this, right? Because if I'm not working 80 hours a week, what am I doing? I'm wasting my time type thing. But you do that for long enough, then, there's going to be burnout. There's going to be burnout. And so a lot of people come to Movara for one or two things. That there's that physical element, of course, but for many, many people, and it can sometimes be a combination of both, it's just that emotional burnout because those dopamine and cortisol levels have been rolling for so long that this has become the new normal. And I experienced that myself last year, where I ended up going up to Alaska. My wife is from Alaska, and we're up there for a month. And I promised my wife I wouldn't work during that month. The first 2 weeks were horrible, absolutely horrible. I was, for the first time in a long time, I had nothing to do. And so I felt weird, and I was looking for things to do to raise my cortisol levels unintentionally. I was painting my in-laws' windowsills, I was mowing the grass, I was doing the lawn, I was cut down trees, I was doing all kinds of stuff because I just felt weird being relaxed. And so it quite often takes these complete disconnects again, like, coming to southern Utah for a couple of weeks and being removed from our natural environment. But even better is when we can do it on our own, self-care activities on a day-to-day basis, right? And do these micro doses consistently on our own terms instead of letting it come to a head and it being effectively kind of forced on us. And so if we pull up the next slide real quick. This lecture titled Addiction versus Connection because, again, no one becomes addicted intentionally, even on hard drugs. I've worked with many people who in the addiction realm and substance abuse, and none of the meth addicts that I've worked with, cocaine, alcoholics, they didn't start using those substances with the plan of becoming addicted. It was usually some type of social thing and that was fun. I want to do it again. And then it turned into, instead of just on Saturday nights, it was Friday and Saturday. And then it turned into a midweek. And then over time, it becomes this addiction. And so you can see on the screen there, we have the addiction cycle. Okay, so if we remove the word addiction out of the center there, it'd just be the cycle, because and that would remove shame as well, because it's life. There's stress. We get triggered, it leads to cravings, and then we fall into our ritual. That gives us some kind of relief, and then we start the circle again. But when we throw addiction in there, right, we've taken the easy out when it comes to our ritual to get the relief, and then we feel shame after. It's like, I did it again. I said I wasn't going to eat the whole tub of ice cream this time, and I did it again. What's the point? And some of us throw our hands up and like, okay, well, I'm going to go out and buy another tub of ice cream, and kind of, I already went off the rails a little bit, so I might as well go all the way. But ultimately, just produces these negative feelings and emotions, which just feeds into that stress cycle. And broken it into these two different elements, because from what I've experienced in my own life and working with people, is that managing the first half of that cycle, the stress, the triggers, and the cravings, is best done through physical activity, providing an outlet for the built-up stress and feelings and emotions that we are experiencing. And in the clinical realm, it's referred to as experiential therapy. So as I said earlier, I own a gym. I do a lot of hands-on, like working out style stuff with my mental health clients. Or we meet at a trailhead, kind of like what they do every morning here at Movara. They're doing it with each other and with friends, but we go and we hike a trail. We're giving our body that opportunity to relieve that stress or those triggers. And then we go into our ritual. And this is where it gets more into the mental, emotional side. What is our ritual? As a cognitive behavioral therapist, I work on the premise of our cognitions affect our behavior. Cognitive behavioral therapist, meaning what we think and why we think it, whether it's we're raised to believe a certain thing or just the way we interpret things, is going to lead to how we act. But jammed in between our cognitions and our behaviors are our thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And most people, the vast majority of people, act based on their thoughts, feelings, and emotions, not on their actual cognitions, like their actual rational cognitive thinking. And so when we can pull people out of that making decisions from an emotional standpoint, because I always like to remind people, when emotions go up, cognition goes down. So whenever we're emotional in any way, our thought processing goes down. So those emotions, include sadness, anger, love. I mean, we've all done irrational things when we're in these types of states of mind, and our body's just designed to be that way. On a physiological level, our body takes blood away from the prefrontal cortex, which is what makes us smart humans and makes us a bit more primitive the reptilian part of our brain, where it's just all about survival. What do I got to do to make it through this moment right now? The reptilian part of our brain isn't worried about how we're going to feel tomorrow. It's all about the here and now. It's that emotional state. And so a big part of cognitive behavioral therapy is writing stuff down. And it's not just for the sake of writing it down. What it actually does is when we write things down, it forces blood back into the prefrontal cortex. It actually makes us more rational when we physically write something down instead of allowing things to sit in our brain and ruminate through our brain. And it usually just ends up being a way worse version of reality when we just leave things in our head. And so when it comes to the connection element, now, you can a quick YouTube search, or there's some great TED Talks out there that talk about connection and helping with addiction, that there's a disconnect there. I always like to take it back to the individual first. I break down connection into two elements: self-connection and then connection with others. Because all too often we focus initially on the outward connection, right? Like, I've got to connect with like-minded people. I need to connect with people that are going to support me. I just need to have connection and love in my life. And that's all true. And we do need that. And it's a good place to start. But if we don't have that self-connection, self-understanding, self-compassion, self-determination, without that, we're working from a really rocky foundation. So I always like to bring it back to that first. We need to make sure that we have connection with ourselves. And I just pretty much like to break things into, for simplicity's sake, into two different categories. And so on the environmental side, there are so many things that we can change to make sure that we have good connection, right? And so the initial response of when we're going to do something that we know we shouldn't do, it's usually because of environmental factors, right? There is a long-term client or guest from here at Movara. I've been here long enough now. She came back for a second. I mean, she's been here multiple times, second time since I've been here. And we were talking because every night she would eat toast. And this is a smart, brilliant woman. Brilliant. And we just talked about, okay, what environmental factors are here? She just couldn't figure it out. And so come up with a simple solution. We said, okay, do you have another fridge in the house? Yep. Okay, why don't we put the bread in the fridge out in the garage, and then put the butter in the regular fridge. And then there was also this honey that they would get. And why don't you ask your husband to hide the honey? And it was like this in her head. She'd never thought of this before, because it was just like, well, it's the kitchen, that's where it goes. And so through making that one simple environmental change, that mindless action of end of the day, long day, everyone's gone to bed, and she's walking past the kitchen and she sees it, she's triggered, she has a craving, then her ritual was to go and have some honey on toast. And so we were able to change that through an environmental, in an environmental way, and it helped solve that problem to a very large degree. Now, again, I'm not going to sit and pretend that every intervention is like foolproof too, because the other side of self-connection is forgiving ourselves, or being real with ourselves that, hey, sometimes we're gonna mess up. And that's totally okay. It's totally okay. But this is where we fall into the second part here of what is the ritual. And again, if you just leave it to the universe to figure out what the ritual is going to be, it's going to be a negative result usually. If it's not planned and prepared for ahead of time, then our mind, our body is going to take the path of least resistance, and the path of least resistance usually leads to results that we don't want. And so two very simple strategies here to help you and to help you after. First of all, to gather information, to increase self-connection, and then to enable us to get that connection with others. So on the next slide here, I call this the 3Ds. Okay, so this is when you get into a situation, it's been a long day, stressed out, you get triggered, you start having a craving for the thing that you know you shouldn't do. Rationally, you know you don't want, you might end up doing it, whether it's overeating, whether it's another cigarette and you've been trying to quit, or the one glass of wine that you know is going to turn into a bottle of wine, or whatever it is. So the first thing in the 3Ds is distract yourself. And so this is environmental, right? What can I do to distract myself right now? For most people, cravings will disappear in 5 to 10 minutes. So if that doesn't work, then we go to the cognitive piece. Decide a pros and cons list. Write down, why do I want to stop this? What is the positive of giving into this? Why did I start this in the first place? Why is this even a goal? And writing this stuff down. Put yourself back in a rational state of mind. If that doesn't work, then you move on to discuss. And this is where you connect with other people. You've done the self-connection piece by utilizing environmental factors. Change that. Nope, still got it. Now you're getting on the mental side. Okay, why am I doing this? What's really at play here? Am I just stressed? Am I just tired? And then this is where you fall on other people. Discuss. Connect with someone who's going to help you. In AA and NA, Alcoholics Anonymous, they have someone called a sponsor. And their sponsor is their person on speed dial that they can call anytime, night or day, to help talk them off the ledge, right? And not make a decision that they're going to regret later. And so people in this group, friends that are close to you, they're the ones that are going to help in those moments. So when it comes to addiction, those environmental factors, we can change those. Make the wrong choice hard to make. And doing that, gaining that self-connection and understanding, writing stuff down. Goals that aren't written down are just dreams. It's the same with plans. What are we going to actually do? And then discuss. That's where you connect with your tribe, people that are going to support you and help you through this and help put you back into a positive state of mind. So that's the basics of addiction versus connection. We want to be able to eliminate the environmental factors in the sense of that are just making it the path of least resistance, the thing that we're easily going to do. Get that self-understanding, that self-connection, and then connect with others. So for those of you on YouTube, thanks for tuning in. This is our weekly Movara live stream. Just wanting to provide you information to help you reach your goals. And please feel free. I love doing one-on-ones and getting into the nitty-gritty of this stuff. If you'd like to do a one-on-one with me, just call into the Movara front desk at 435-673-6600. I'd love to jump on Zoom with you. But this is Ray signing off from YouTube. Thanks for tuning in.